Well, it's been a really difficult week for everybody throughout the world, with the coronavirus escalating, and many people have lost loved ones. The National Health Service is fighting to save lives. Doctors and nurses are risking their own lives. And people serving us in the supermarkets are doing the best to make sure that we have provision. People are isolated in their own homes, and we in churches are trying to connect people and trying to help people, and we're doing what we can to give hope in this situation to those, some of whom don't believe in God at all. But I want to go back and reflect on the story that Simon Wiesenthal told us about his time during the Holocaust, when he met and spoke to a dying SS officer. And before I do, I want to thank Ruth Ball and Ruth Taylor for their input and their opinion on this question about forgiveness. And Ruth, I want to thank you very much for that, and taking the time to do that. It was really interesting what you said. But I'm going to speak about the views of theologians and historians. And the first one this week will be the story of Susanna Heschel, who is the daughter of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was an amazing theologian and a well-respected man. And Susanna Heschel also wrote the book The Aryan Jesus, which is a book on her study of the German church during the Holocaust. So she's a really interesting lady. And her views are as follows. I would have done exactly as Simon Wiesenthal did. Since the war, Wiesenthal's questions have taken an even more practical significance than they did for him in the camp that one day. Can we forgive the Nazis their crimes? Can we forgive the German people? In Judaism, where forgiveness requires both atonement and restitution, there are two sins that can never be forgiven: murder and destroying someone's reputation. In these two situations, atonement is possible, but not forgiveness. A murdered person, after all, cannot forgive the murderer, and a good reputation can never be restored. The Holocaust involved both of these sins, murder and the defamation of the Jewish people, through anti-Semitic propaganda. No matter how much atonement is expressed for these crimes, no restitution is possible, and therefore no forgiveness can follow. But haven't the Germans repented, you might ask? What about the millions of dollars of reparations that have been given to individuals and to the state of Israel? Unlike South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Committee, Germany never established a public forum at which crimes against Jews were openly confessed. On the contrary, denazification was imposed by the Allies on the Germans, who by and large concealed or minimized their crimes. Many of those who created the Third Reich remained in positions of power after the war simply by denying their Nazi involvement, and their denials were accepted by a community that conspired with them to cover up and condone rather than repent. Even as Chancellor Konrad Adenauer publicly declared Germany's readiness to pay reparations, his Secretary of State was Hans Glock, the author of the emergency legislation that gave Hitler unlimited dictatorial powers, and of the Nuremberg laws that disenfranchised the German Jews. But because Glock was never a member of the Nazi Party, he was free to serve in the government, even one led by the impeccably anti-Nazi Adenauer. And the Nazis' destruction of European Jewry was not their only crime against humanity. or even against Germany itself. Historians have shown us that the Nazi Germany was not simply an iron cage in which German citizens were forced to abide by Hitler's orders on pain of death, but was instead a cooperative society with its citizens often eager participants in its crimes. Goethe's ally has revealed that some Aryan German families handed over their elderly grandparents or unruly children to be put to death in the euthanasia program. The outcome was both murder and a kind of national suicide, soiling Germany perhaps forever. How could this ever be atoned for? My father, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, wrote that the blood of the innocent cries forever. Should that blood cease to cry, humanity would cease to be. Perhaps the issue is not forgiveness, but rather how the victims and their descendants can live without bitterness or vengeance, without losing their own humanity, when they hear the cry of the blood of their families. Rather than asking for forgiveness, the descendants of the Nazis should continue to hear the cries of Jewish blood and thereby preserve their own humanity. Well, Susanna Heschel raises some interesting points there. And this week, maybe we should just consider what she said, and we'd look at somebody else next week. But in the midst of the coronavirus difficulties, we know that God will bring peace if we ask him so. Shabbat Shalom, Mike Fryer.